Imagine as a young couple, you move to a foreign country with hopes and dreams of a brighter future. You work hard, learn the language, everything seems to be going well, except the person you share your bed with is not who they claim to be. They are a demon out to destroy your very soul. This is a story of one such couple. Dublin, Ireland. It's November 2nd, 2021. The temperature hovers just above freezing as Garda Colin Milley cycles through the city centre on a routine patrol. At around 3:20 p.m, something catches his eye. A man running barefoot down Middle Abbey Street, dressed only in a pair of shorts. It's an unusual sight, even for Dublin. The man is clearly distressed, his eyes wide and bulging, and despite the cold, he's drenched in sweat. Garda Milley intercepts the man near the spire on O'Connell Street. He identifies himself as Diego Coasta Silva and explains that he jogged all the way from Finglas, insisting that he enjoys running barefoot. But it's not just his appearance that's concerning. Diego is visibly shaken, and when asked if he's okay, he reveals that he's been feeling upset and depressed. He confesses that he recently told his wife about kissing another woman and now fears she's having an affair in retaliation. Sensing something is seriously wrong, Garda Milley makes the decision to detain Diego under Section 12 of the Mental Health Act for a medical assessment. He's first taken to the Store Street Garda station before being transferred to the Mater Hospital. There, doctors note that Diego is showing signs of a psychotic episode, delusions, disordered thoughts, and an intense paranoia that his wife might harm him. The medical team urges him to stay in the hospital voluntarily, but Diego refuses. Despite their concerns, he's released the next afternoon on November 3rd. His wife, Fabiole De Campos Silva, arrives at the hospital to pick him up. She tells the doctors that she's seen a drastic change in her husband's behavior since the previous Saturday. Although Diego was a regular cannabis user, he hadn't smoked in days, but the shift in his mental state was undeniable. Against medical advice, Diego insists on leaving. Looking back, you can't help but wish more had been done to keep him there. Tragically, that drive home would be the last time anyone saw Fabiole alive. On the morning of November 4th, 2021, at exactly 6:15 a.m., a chilling call was made to the emergency services in Dublin. On the other end of the line was Diego Coasta Silva, sounding unnervingly calm as he spoke to Neil Murray of the Dublin Fire Brigade. His words were simple but shocking. "I think I killed my wife," he went on to explain. "I had a fight with my wife. She tried to kill me." While the full recording of this emergency call was played during the trial, the public doesn't have access to it today. But those words alone paint a disturbing picture of what was to come. Within minutes, Garda Peter Kilgallen arrived at the scene, an apartment in Charlestown Place, Finglas. The Garda Armed Special Unit, or the ASU, had already secured the area, and Garda Kilgallen stood behind one of his armed officers as they prepared to confront whatever awaited them behind that door. They knocked, and the door opened, revealing Diego Coasta Silva, barefoot, wearing just shorts and flip-flops. His body was stained with blood, especially around his wrists. He repeated his earlier confession to the Gardaí, saying, "I think I killed my wife." The ASU members entered first. What they found inside was the grim aftermath of a brutal attack. Garda Kilgallen followed them in and saw the lifeless body of a woman lying between the doorway of one room and the hallway. The sight was haunting. Her head was completely severed from her torso. Knife wounds riddled her body, and one knife was still embedded in her chest, protruding from just above the left breast. The scene was a picture of horror, one that would stay with anyone who witnessed it. Garda Kilgallen exited the apartment and questioned Coasta Silva further. Diego, now handcuffed and under supervision of suspicion of murder, gave a disturbing explanation. He claimed that his wife had tried to kill him, saying, "She took my heart, she took my head. I did that because she was cheating on me." His words were incoherent and seemed to come from a place of delusion rather than reality. The apartment was immediately sealed off and preserved for examination by the Garda Technical Bureau. What followed was a meticulous forensic investigation, with the Office of the State Pathologist leading the post-mortem. Pathologist Dr. Heidi Ockers later confirmed what everyone expected. The cause of death was decapitation. The brutal act of beheading was a primary factor, but blunt force trauma and asphyxia also contributed. Additionally, the post-mortem revealed other stab wounds and bruises, some of which were likely defensive as Fabiole desperately fought for her life. The scene of sheer brutality was just the beginning, a case where the line between reality and delusion became so blurred that it led to an unspeakable tragedy. Fabiole De Campos was a 32-year-old woman who had moved to Ireland from Brazil with her husband, Diego Coasta Silva. The couple had wed in July 2016 and arrived in Dublin later that year in December, eager to start a new chapter in their lives. Both had dreams of learning English, building careers, and integrating into their new community. They enrolled in the same institution to study English, hoping to improve their language skills and expand their horizons together. Fabiole was known amongst her friends and the Brazilian community in Dublin as a warm, kind-hearted person with big dreams. In the 5 years since arriving in Ireland, she had worked various jobs, including as a childminder and a hotel worker at the Fleet Street Hotel. Her hard work paid off when she recently secured a new position as a customer service support analyst for a cryptocurrency company. It was a role she was excited about, a step forward in her life that she and Diego were building together. Those who knew Fabiole were devastated when they heard of her tragic death. In the days following the news, shockwaves rippled throughout the community. "It's a real shock. I can't believe it. She was in love and happy," one of her friends commented, struggling to comprehend how such a tragedy could have occurred. The vibrant and ambitious woman they once knew was suddenly gone. Diego Coasta Silva, too, was once seen as a loving and devoted husband. He had often expressed his affection for Fabiole publicly, sharing poems and sweet messages on social media. In one such post, he wrote, "If I cry, cheer me up, but if I smile, it's for you." But these declarations of love stood in stark contrast to the horrific events that would later unfold. In the days after the crime, the apartment where Fabiole lost her life became a site of mourning. Heartbroken locals, many of whom had never met her, came to pay their respects. Flowers piled up outside the building's entrance, and handwritten notes offered words of peace. One simply read, "Rest in peace, angel," while others expressed, "May the light of heaven shine upon you. May you rest in peace." As authorities worked through the investigation, efforts were also made to notify Fabiole's family in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Her relatives, thousands of miles away, were left reeling from the news. According to the reports, they were heartbroken and struggled to come to terms with the brutal loss of their daughter. Plans were made to repatriate the remains back to Brazil following the completion of the post-mortem examination. A source close to the family described the tragedy as especially painful given the circumstances. This poor woman died in shocking circumstances, but it's compounded by the fact that her own family are on the other side of the world. It's an incredibly sad case. Fabiole's death was not only a devastating loss for her family and friends, but it also highlighted the silent struggles that often lurk beneath seemingly happy lives. In March 2024, the trial of Diego Coasta Silva began at the Central Criminal Court. From the very start, his defense was clear. He pleaded not guilty to the murder of his wife, Fabiole De Campos, by reason of insanity. The court heard a story that was both chilling and tragic, a descent into madness fueled by a cannabis-induced psychosis that left a young woman dead. The heart of the defense's case revolved around Diego's brief that his wife was possessed by a serpent. In his delusional state, Diego claimed that he needed to decapitate her to kill the creature that had taken control of her. Two forensic psychiatrists testified that Diego was suffering from a mental disorder, as defined by the Criminal Law Insanity Act of 2006. Their assessment concluded that he was legally insane at the time of the killing, qualifying him for the special verdict of not guilty by reason of insanity. According to the evidence presented during the trial, Diego had been in the grips of psychosis triggered by long-term cannabis use. He had begun smoking the drug at the age of 16 and regularly used it until his wife urged him to cut back in 2020. Despite attempting to reduce his intake, the damage had already been done. On the night of the murder, Diego's delusions reached a terrifying peak. Diego told the court that he had confessed to his wife about an infidelity, believing that she was now planning revenge against him. The tension escalated to a point that he became convinced that she was possessed and she was going to kill him. In his interview with the Guardian, Diego described a bizarre and disturbing series of events leading up to the murder. He recalled feeling unsafe and hearing a sound of vibration in his ears. Along the voices in his head, he insisted that he wasn't angry with his wife, but acted out of sheer terror, believing that he had no other choice. On the morning of November 4th, Diego described how his wife bit his leg and scratched his shoulder with his nails during what he called a fight. He responded by striking her 2 or 3 times with a cup before choking her until she fainted. He then put his foot on her neck to ensure she wouldn't get up, followed by stabbing her in the heart. But in his delusional state, even that wasn't enough. Diego believed that to truly kill the serpent, he had to cut off the head. Over the next 10 minutes, he used 4 different knives to decapitate her. When asked by the guardai why he did it, Diego simply said, "How can I explain? Sometimes you have to behead somebody because this person is possessed." The defense presented evidence from Dr. Diabla Duffy, a consultant forensic psychiatrist at the Central Mental Hospital, who confirmed that Diego continued to suffer from a severe mental disorder even after the killing. She recommended ongoing inpatient treatment, describing his need for specialized psychiatric care. The prosecution did not dispute Diego's mental state. Barrister Edward Ducey, representing the prosecution, highlighted that both forensic psychiatrists agreed Diego's actions were driven by a cannabis-induced psychosis. Symptoms included paranoia, delusions, and auditory hallucinations, all of which clouded his perception of reality. In his summation to the jury, Justice Michael McGrath acknowledged the horrific nature of the crime, but stressed that Diego's mental disorder rendered him incapable of understanding the nature and quality of his actions. The judge stated, "This is a case where the tragic death of a young woman is made even more devastating by the circumstances surrounding it. A life full of promise was cut short in a horrific manner by the actions of the defendant." He went on to express his condolences to the Fabiole family, recognizing the immense grief they must continue to endure. After 2 hours and 24 minutes of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict, not guilty by reason of insanity. The decision meant that instead of serving time in prison, Diego would be committed to the Central Mental Hospital for further treatment. The outcome, while just in the eyes of the law, was bittersweet for all involved. As the verdict was read, Diego broke down in tears. Though his family was not present during the trial, it was clear that the weight of what he had done was finally sinking in. For Diego, the realization of his actions during psychosis would be a lifelong burden. The case was a tragic reminder of the devastating consequences of untreated mental illnesses, particularly when compounded by substance abuse. The trial also underscored the growing concerns surrounding cannabis-induced psychosis, a condition increasingly seen in Ireland as more young people fall victim to the potent strains now available. The judge's final words to the jury were sympathetic. "This case has been difficult to listen to, and I acknowledge the heavy emotional toll it may have had on you. I thank you for your service and now relieve you of any further jury duties for life." The tragic case of Diego Coasta Silva is a part of a growing pattern linked to cannabis-induced psychosis. In recent years, this condition has been connected to multiple murder cases in Ireland. Just last year alone, 5 murder trials cited the psychosis, raising alarms about the impact of increasingly potent cannabis strains. Garda Commissioner Drew Harris and the Health Services Executive, HSE, have both expressed concerns over the rising strength of cannabis, warning its contribution to serious mental health issues, particularly amongst young people. The HSE reports that cannabis dependency has now overtaken alcohol addiction amongst young people in Ireland. Those who start using the drug in their teens face a much higher risk of developing severe mental health problems. This isn't just about one isolated incident. In January 2019, Jasmine McMonagle was killed while her children slept nearby. Her attacker, Richard Burke, was suffering from a cannabis-induced psychosis. More recently, in April 2023, Stephen Silver was sentenced to life after the murder of Garda Colm Horrican, a crime committed during a psychotic episode triggered by cannabis use. These cases and others like them reveal a troubling connection between the long-term cannabis use and fatal consequences driven by mental health crisis. And if you're interested in more content like this, check out the playlist on screen. Until next time, stay safe.